This is radio.
I mentioned before that I had some bad news this week. I realise it's going to be kind of an elephant in the room if I don't explain, but my beloved father passed away, and it was a big shock. And one of the loveliest things, though, that came out of it was, and I'll talk about it more on the podcast. It feels more appropriate to do it there. But I want to say thanks to all the listeners, the Listeners Union. You know, you did some amazing things for me. You sent me a card. You raised more than £3,000 in my dad's name, which was a huge and unexpected thing that brought delight and some light in the darkness. You gave money to the Trussell Trust, which raises money to help people who are hungry. And my dad grew up very poor, and he knew what hunger was, and he knew the pain of it, so he would be absolutely delighted. And you also did something else for me, which I won't reveal, but has got something to do with Dinner Winner, which we'll play a little bit later on. Steve, I've brought the mood down. Say something hilarious.
Well, to be honest, I'm annoyed because they've ruined Dinner Winner for me potentially here, and so I would like to just say, guys, what were you playing at, really?
Well, you're right. Yes, I mean, let's not give it away. What happened? But something remarkable happened. Something turned up at my house, and it involved dinner.
Radio X. Danny Wallace.
One of the interesting things of the last couple of weeks was that the listeners have formed their own union. There is a listeners' union now.
They've become unionised.
They've become unionised, and it made me a little bit nervous at first, but senior listener Jürgen says, the following communication comes from the office of the Senior Listeners Union. We were concerned that Steve might try to launch a coup in the glorious leader's absence. As soon as we realised, though, that he thought it was a type of car, we relaxed. So that's very nice. And senior listener James Beckley says, the Senior Listeners Union are here, and we have badges. Our influence will be used, if necessary, in the great leader's favour, which is good. So it's a union that just supports me, because I was very concerned, Steve, about this when I first realised it was happening. I didn't give sign-off to it.
Yeah.
Because as soon as they form a union, they're going to start expecting a raise in the listening standards. And they're going to be expecting a lot more of us. Which means we're going to make a lovely watery curry.
So on that basis, it's 2-1 to Danny.
Great precision. The paving is done. It is now time to work on this lasagna that stood...
I never lost... It's a game of work.
Coping with the news I mentioned earlier, and just trying to keep busy, and it's why I was walking everywhere and cooking, and I planned to throw something together on Friday, but then a box arrived. A big box, delivered to my home, and paid for by some very special people. Some listeners who wanted to make me feel better, and they had and they did. These listeners clubbed together, and knowing my love of Friday night curry, they organised a feast which could feed my entire family, including my mum. And it meant a great deal, and it means a great deal, and even better, it was a Vinnie Patel special, my favourite curries of all. And so, we feasted. On delicately spiced chicken, on robust spiced lamb, on breads and dal and more, and it was outstanding. And if I don't get double points for this, then you are not just hitting me during a period when I can honestly say I'm at my lowest, Joe, but you're insulting the listeners. So let's hear what Steve had. Let's remain open-minded.
Yeah.
Steve, who really shouldn't even tell us if he has any respect for me or for my family.
Chicken and rice.
Yeah, chicken and rice.
Chicken and rice.
Okay.
Chicken and rice.
So it...
Asked from your podcast pals, and obviously I mentioned that I was away last week, and I'm sorry about that, because for a whole week you didn't know what Steve had for dinner, and all those facts are lost to the wind. I'm afraid we'll never know. It was probably just put in your listener pads, just put chicken coleslaw and chips for Monday to Friday.
That'll cover it.
Pretty much right, anyway. Yeah.
And that will cover it. And obviously, I was away because I've been sad, and my dad passed away unexpectedly, and I just thought I'd tell you a little bit about him, things I've sort of learned in the last week or two, and I guess we'll need some appropriate music, Joe. So if you do that. And we will, obviously, we'll get back to all the nonsense soon, but I just wanted to tell you maybe 3 things that I've learned about him that I think might be relevant to everyone, because I found some pretty good rules for life. The first, and I knew this, my dad was fair. He was such a fair man, and he was never rude, and he listened. And just from going through his last emails, because I sort of just found out that you have to do that kind of thing, he was literally replying to people like Rory from the DVLA, whose department he'd accidentally emailed, by saying, "Thank you, Rory, for your kind and helpful reply. I will do as you suggest. I apologise for wasting your time, and thank you again. Kind wishes, Ian." And that to me said that he never sort of ignored a stranger, and he didn't get annoyed, and he wrote back nicely. And that, for me, that's a lesson in how to be. And number 2, he was brave, in a way we can all be. From emails I've had from people he simply crossed paths with since 1961 at least, he stood up at work for women who were being bullied just for being women, people from minorities just because of where they happened to be born, and gay people who were having their jobs threatened simply because they were gay. And using whatever power he could, and doing whatever he could for those around him, he won every single battle. And he never once told me those stories, because I guess to him it was just normal. Even though in those times it wasn't normal. And I realise he showed me all this by example, but never by boast. And a selfish one, I suppose, at the end. I never would have done anything at all ever without his advice and his support. And I wouldn't be talking to you now. And I think maybe there are loved ones who've done the same for you, maybe. Dad was a guy who just wanted to do what made him happy, and I think that's a great rule for life. Turns out he was once scouted by Manchester United, thanks to his incredible left foot. But he said, "You're okay, I want to do my own thing," and he did. Now, I didn't inherit his left foot, and I'm pleased, because what a weird thing to leave me that would be, you know. How would I explain having his left foot in the house? Where would I put it? But the lesson of my dad's last day was a better inheritance. So, after seeing me and his grandkids at a distance, he did his usual walk by the seafront to look at the waves that he loved to watch crash. And he ate his childhood favourite fish and chips. He celebrated a win by Carlisle United, the first time this has ever happened, I think, maybe in over 2,000 years. And he laughed with the girl he's loved since 1961. So it was a good day for a good man who deserved a good day. And so I end today in a way that I hope makes you call your dad today if you've got him, or call your mum. If you're lucky enough to be in a bubble with them at these weird times where we're not allowed anywhere near them, hug them hard and tell them you love them. And a final thank you to you guys who've been amazing. You know, I want to thank James and Charlotte and everyone in the Listeners' Union for raising money in my dad's name. As I said earlier, he grew up very poor. He knew what hunger was. He knew how it felt. And you guys raised well over £3,000 in his memory, and he'd have loved that it was going to the Trussell Trust to help people who need food. And I got cards and tweets and emails and a curry. So I thank you very much, and it brought light. And while our news was a body shock, the only bigger shock I've had since was that I found out that my dad left everything to Steve. Normal service now resumes. We'll see you next week. Bye-bye.